Hare Krishna, dear devotees. Please join us today. We'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam 11th Canto, Chapter 7. Lord Kṛṣṇa Instructs Uddhava. Hare Krishna. Please join us for little Harinam. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Jai Radha Madhava Kunja Bihari. Gopi Jana Vallabha Girivardhari. Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki Janand Kori Vaishnavind ki jai. Please join us for Mangalacharan prayers. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Narayanam Namaskritya Naram Chaiva Narottamam Devim Saraswatim Vyasam Tato Jayam Udiriyet Shrutam Swakatha Krishna Punya Shravana Kirtanaha Hridayantasto Hirvadrani Vidhunote Suhasatam Nashtaprayeshu Bhadreshu Nityam Bhagavata Sevaya Bhagavate Uttam Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Nashtaki. Hare Krishna. So today we'll be studying Srimad Bhagavatam, 11th Canto, Chapter 7, Lord Krishna Instructs Uddhava. So this is part of Uddhava Gita, part 1. So again, this is where the instruction starts. The previous chapter is the setting of the scene, where it was identified how the demigods prayed. And now here, Lord Krishna gives his instructions to Uddhava before departing from earth. And Uddhava is feeling this intense feeling of separation. And so he has various prayers that he is putting forth, as well as various questions as he receives the instructions directly from Lord Shri Krishna. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Yad Atha Ma Mahabhaga
Yadatha Mam Mahabhaga
Tachikirshtam Eva Me
Tachikirshtam Eva Me
Brahma Bhavo Lokapalaha
Brahma Bhavo Lokapala
Svarvasa Me Avikanshinaha.
Svarvasam Me Abhikanshina.
Please.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha
Yadatha Mam Mahabhaga
Yad Atha Ma Mahabhaga
Tachikirshtam Eva Me
Tachikirshtam Eva Me
Brahma Bhavo Lokapala
Brahma Bhavo Lokapalaha
Svarvasam Me Abhikanshina.
Svarvasam Me Avikanshinaha. Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
Shri Bhagavan Uvacha.
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
The Supreme Personality of Godhead said,
Yat,
Yat,
that which, Atha,
Atha,
you spoke, Mam, to me, Mahabhaga,
Mahabhaga,
O greatly fortunate Uddhav,
O greatly fortunate Uddhav,
Tat, that, Chikishatam,
Chikishitam,
the program that I am desiring to execute,
the program that I am desiring to execute,
Eva, certainly, May, mine, Brahma, Lord Brahma, Bhavaha, Lord Shiva, Lokapalaha, the leaders of all universal planets, Swahavasam, abode in Vaikuntha, May, mine, Avikanshinaha, they are desiring. Translation by the disciples of His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. The Supreme Personality of Godhead said, O greatly fortunate Uddhav, you have accurately revealed my desire to withdraw the Yadu dynasty from the earth and return to my own abode in Vaikuntha. Thus, Lord Brahma, Lord Shiva, and all other planetary rulers are now praying for me to resume my residence in Vaikuntha. Purport. Each and every demigod has his particular abode in the heavenly planets within the material universe. Although Lord Vishnu is sometimes counted among the demigods, his abode is in Vaikuntha, the spiritual sky, The demigods are universal controllers within the kingdom of Maya, but Vishnu is the lord of the illusory potency and many other spiritual potencies. His exalted residence does not lie within the kingdom of his insignificant maid-servant Maya. Lord Vishnu, the personality of Godhead, is the supreme lord of all lords. The demigods are his separated parts and parcels, being themselves minute Jiva souls. The demigods are under the influence of the potency of Maya, but Lord Vishnu is always the supreme controller of Maya. The personality of Godhead is the reservoir and root of all existence, and the material world is just a dim reflection of the brilliant scenery of his eternal spiritual abode, where everything is infinitely beautiful and pleasurable. Vishnu is the supreme reality, and no living entity can ever be equal to or greater than him. The Lord exists within his own unique category called Vishnu Tattva, or the Supreme Personality of Godhead. All other prominent or extraordinary living entities owe their positions and potencies to the Lord. Ultimately, Vishnu himself is a plenary expansion of Lord Krishna, the original source of all the Vishnu Tattva and Jiva Tattva expansions. That Lord Krishna is the basis of everything. Hare Krishna. Please join us for the recitation of Guru Pranati together. Namo Vishnu Padaya Krishna Pristhaya Bhutale Shrimate Bhakti Vedanta Swami Niti Namine Namaste Saraswate Deve Gaurvani Pracharine Nirvishesha Shunyavadi Pasyatya Deshitarine Om Jnana Timrandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshurun Militam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Mukham Karoti Vachalam Pangum Langhayate Girim Yatkritpa Tadaham Vande Shri Gurum Dinataranam Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama, Rama Rama, Hare Hare. Hare Krishna. So today we'll be covering, as part of Uddhava Gita Part 1, Lord Krishna's teachings to Uddhav before he departs. Who? Lord Krishna departs from earth. And here we also see how Uddhav is getting this intense feeling of separation. And he is praying to Lord Krishna to take him along with him. And when Lord Krishna decides otherwise, then he surrenders to Lord's will. So in this particular chapter, again, we also have to understand who is Uddhav. If you recall, Uddhav, he also has another name, Pavanyadhi, and he is son of Devabhag, brother of Vasudev, father of Lord Vasudev Krishna. Uddhav, he is disciple of Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the demigods. He is a very learned person and is an advisor and a close associate of Lord Shri Krishna. And how did Uddhav get this position to be a close associate of Lord Shri Krishna, that he could stay with Lord Krishna day and night? And even in places where Lord Krishna would not take Lord Balaram, like at the house of the Hema, who was previously known as Kubja, her home. So Lord Krishna did not take Balaram because he would be embarrassed. But he took Uddhav with him, because Uddhav had the right attitude and right mindset. Being younger to Lord Krishna, he looked exactly like Krishna. And his dress code was similar to Krishna. He also wore yellow clothes. He also wore the lotus garlands and at times Vajanti Mala. And he also had mukut similar to Lord Shri Krishna with more punk in it. Now when people hear it, they get bewildered. He looked exactly like Krishna. He walks similar to Krishna. He talks similar to Krishna, very pleasing manner. And at the same time, his paraphernalia is very much like Krishna. So what are the differences? Well, his mannerism is in a servitude manner, while Lord Krishna is in a commanding manner. So that's one difference. Second is Uddhav, we haven't seen him take part in any of the battles or wars. when Lord Krishna was annihilating so many demons, Uddhav was the one who was always providing advice only when Lord asked. And so such a wonderful personality this Uddhav is, who happens to be a cousin of Lord Shri Krishna, looks like Lord Shri Krishna and constantly serves Lord Krishna. So when Lord Krishna is sleeping, he would press his feet. And why would his clothes be same as Lord Krishna? Because he would only wear the remnants, the clothes that Lord Krishna would discard, he would give them to Uddhav. So that's a loving exchange, right? He's presenting it to Uddhav as part of his affection for Uddhav, because Uddhav is serving so much. And many of Srila Prabhupada's pastimes, which we discuss, that Srila Prabhupada many times he would give gifts to his disciples. Like Lakshman Prabhu, he even has a couple of items, right? So again, so many disciples of Srila Prabhupada, he shares. Palaka Prabhu has the shoes, and so many items we see devotees have received from Srila Prabhupada. So similarly, this is loving exchange. So it's part of this affection, giving and receiving. And so Uddhav was receiving so many wonderful gifts, the clothes. So he would wear those clothes. So he was unmarried. That's another aspect, because there is no reference given of him getting married. And he was younger to Lord Krishna, but not that much. He was almost the same age, just a few years difference. And how did he get to that position? So in the days of yore, somebody says days of yore, what does that mean? The days when early days, in the early part of Lord Brahma's day, where not yet the palaces and palatial buildings were built. People were very much in the Sattvic or in the Krita Yuga, in the Satyug times. When the demigods were there, Prajapatis were there, so there was a great yajna. They were worshipping Lord Vishnu, Lord Krishna. And during this worship, everyone was making prayers. So one of the Vasus, he had this prayer from his heart, deep from his heart, that he wanted to become associate of Lord Shri Krishna, to serve him, to be always under the shelter of his lotus feet. So to satisfy this Vasu, Lord Krishna allowed him his expansion as Uddhav to become his cousin and close associate. So that's how Uddhav came into being. Now, of all the Yadavas, he was supposed to be the closest to Lord Shri Krishna. And he was constantly serving Lord Krishna, pressing his feet, taking care of him, dressing him up, giving him bath, all the activities he wanted to do. So that's Vapu Seva, taking care of the personal form. And Uddhav would only provide advice when Lord Krishna would ask. So again, that's his sweet nature. He's always taking a humble position. Sometimes if somebody becomes a close associate, then familiarity breeds contempt, but that was never the case with Uddhav. And he was a disciple of Brihaspati, the spiritual master of the demigods, so such a highly learned person. And yet at the same time, he had no tinge of pride. He was a soul surrendered at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. So Lord Krishna, in the previous chapter as we discussed, after the demigods came and they prayed to Lord Krishna, right? Lord Brahma came with his sons and the great sages. Lord Shiva came with his Bhutganas, all the ghosts and hobgoblins and pishachas and so forth. And Indra, the king of the demigods, came with all other, demigods. And they all prayed to Lord Shri Krishna. So when they prayed to Lord Shri Krishna, there were some amazing prayers that Lord Brahma started reciting. First, he was glorifying Lord Krishna's illusory energy, Maya. And so again, before we go over there, let's cover. So, as in the 6th chapter of 11th Canto, we hear that. So it's also very important to quickly cover what Uddhava Gita would be, but after we cover, bring up the relationship from the previous chapter. So in the 6th chapter, there were these prayers there, right? And in these prayers, Lord Brahma is singing prayers. He is glorifying that Lord, he is transcendent to the three modes of material nature, his illusory energy, Maya. Yet at the same time, they are all constantly under the influence of Lord's illusory energy. And they are then glorifying. So there is some joking also happening. So sometimes when somebody becomes familiar, right? Demigods were visiting now and then to meet Lord Shri Krishna in Dwarka. So, and Lord Krishna was treating them like very close associate and a friend. And there are some amazing pastimes where Lord Brahma, once he came, and Dwapal asked in Dwarka, who are you? So Lord Brahma said, I am Brahma. So at that time, he went, the gatekeeper went to Lord Krishna and said, a personality by the name Brahma wants to meet you. So Krishna asked him, you should ask this guest which Brahma he is. And now, the gatekeepers, the servants would just follow as it is. So he went to Lord Brahma and said, which Brahma are you? And Lord Brahma, he was bewildered. He thought that he is the only Brahma. And all of a sudden, Lord is asking, which Brahma? So he says, I am the Brahma of this material universe. There is only one. So now the gatekeeper, he goes and informs Lord Krishna that this personality is very arrogant. He actually is a little upset. And he's saying he's the only Brahma in this universe. So Lord Krishna smiles and he says, bring him in. So when Lord Brahma comes in, at that time, Lord Krishna, he calls all the other, not just Brahma, but also the Shivas of different universes. And Lord Brahma is surprised to see that some of the Brahmas have 100 heads. Some of them had 1,000 heads. Some of them had 10,000 heads. Depending on the size, the bigger the universe, the bigger is the management aspect of those universes. So they need all that brain power. And they're all praying to Lordship. So when Lord Brahma sees this, he's astonished, he's surprised that, I used to think I'm, the first living entity and I'm the only one. Here he comes to know, Pratyaksha Vagmam Dharmyam. So he comes to know by direct perception that he is just a small Brahma in this small universe. And there are many other material universes, in existence, which are much, much bigger than this universe that we live in. So it is very important for us not to become arrogant. Yet at the same time, when Lord Krishna is doing this, he's smiling. So this brings some familiarity. He's doing, he's imparting the instruction, but not chastising. He's lovingly telling. So just like a father lovingly corrects his son with a smile, the son is able to quickly understand. And it's very interesting that I have seen with the case of kids, that when you tell them in a happy mood, they quickly learn it. If you tell them in a strict mood, then they are more fearful. They may learn it, but they may not take it to their heart, so they may forget it very quickly. So yes, it's very important for us to impart that language in a loving manner. And sometimes devotees who were new in Krishna consciousness in the early days, they were surprised. They were coming from such, strange backgrounds from all over the place, yet at the same time by taking shelter in Krishna consciousness and under the instructions, under the shelter of Srila Prabhupada, their life completely transformed. And then they feel so much, awe and reverence towards Srila Prabhupada that we see every day when we meet them. So that has been reflected that here Lord Brahma got this attitude, this mood of awe and reverence towards Lord Shri Krishna, but he also saw that Lord Krishna is such an affectionate father. He jokingly, telling him, correcting him, and removing his pride. And pride cometh before fall. So he's helping, a father is helping the son not to fall down, rather giving them a caution, look before you leap. And pride is the roadway to hell, and the three gates of hell are lust, anger and greed. So we should be very careful of these three enemies. So here they are praying, and now Lord Brahma is praying along with the other demigods, and he prays in some joking mode by saying that, Lord Krishna, you are such an affectionate father that we brought you all these garlands. And now all these garlands were actually coming from the heavenly gardens, right? Nandakanana gardens and so forth. And they were, beautiful Vajanti malas, lotus garlands and so forth. And then they were saying, he was praying that even Goddess Lakshmi, the goddess of fortune, she resides on your chest as Shivatsa, the white curly hair. So there she is resting. And she may become jealous by seeing our wilted flowers. Now these are not wilted flowers, they are fresh flowers, but they are jokingly saying that. And saying that as a co-wives become jealous of another wife. So, they are saying that yes, we are also devotees, she is also a devotee. And a devotee may become jealous of another devotee, seeing the offerings being accepted by the Lordship, being so affectionate. And then they start glorifying Lord's lotus feet, as how by the mercy of Lord's lotus feet, Ganges come. And Ganges can eradicate all the sinful reactions of those who regularly take bath. Then they are talking about how Lord Krishna, so now that Ganges topic is there, they go into describing how Ganges came. As Lord appeared as Vamandev. So these are the demigods, are revealing that Lord, how he cheated Bali Maharaj. And appearing as Vamandev, he asked for 3 steps of land. So they are putting their perception. While the devotee's perception that we understand from the Shasta that Shukdev Goswami is describing is that Lord wanted to glorify Bali Maharaj. That even after giving everything, his focus was to satisfy the Lord, to go along with the will of the Lord. And that made him more glorious than Indra, who was able to take away all that he had. Yet at the same time, he was able to get Krishna. He was able to purchase Vamandev with his love and with his devotion. So that's the devotee's version. And here, the demigod's version is, that's given in Srimad Bhagavatam, is like Lord Brahma is saying that he cheated Bali Maharaj of all his possessions, the whole universe. And with the second step, when he penetrated the covering of the universe, the Vajra, the water that came in, washing your lotus feet, became potent and is known as Ganges. And Lord Shiva, he takes those Ganges on his head. So again, Bhagirath, he prayed, right? The grandson of Sagar, great grandson of Maharaj Sagar. And he prayed and invoked, please, Ganges to come to earth. Yet at the same time, Ganges said, if I come to earth, my force is so strong that I'll just penetrate through and through the earth planet. So at that time, you have to have someone who can sustain this force. So Bhagirath then worships Lord Shiva, and Lord Shiva agrees. And Lord Shiva takes Ganges waters, he ties her in his hair. So again, jatai, right? So his matted locks, that's where he is holding Ganges. Now you have to understand, Ganges get the potency by washing the lotus feet of Lord Trivikrama, expansion of Lord Vamandev. And that Ganges that has washed the lotus feet of Vishnu has been taken by the topmost devotee of Lord Vishnu, Vaishnavanam Yatha Shambhu, Lord Shiva. He takes that. So he is getting purified by accepting her in his matted locks, and is constantly bathing in Ganges in this process. And how the 3 Vedas, Rig, Sam and Yajur Vedas, they meditate on Lord's lotus feet. So again, these pastimes are being described. And then various incarnations like Mahavishnu's incarnations, the creation of material universe, and how Lord is so merciful that he appeared to deliver the burden of the earth. They are praying, and then at this time they know that this is the time that Lord will be returning home. So he has made this arrangement through the Brahmana's curse so that he'll be going home. So at that time the demigods, they are praying that yes, Lord, it is your time to go back home to Vaikuntha. And being so merciful, please, they are expressing their gratitude towards Lord Shri Krishna. And at that time, Lord Shri Krishna, he responds. So what did he respond to Lord Brahma? Saying that, yes, I have taken care of your business, but there is another business I have to take care of. I have relieved the earth from the burden of these demons, demonic kings. But there is a burden of love. Because all the personalities who appeared in the Yadava dynasty, all the Yadus, they were so powerful, almost as powerful as Lord Shri Krishna, because behind the strength of the son is the strength of the father. Since they were backed by Lord Shri Krishna, and Dwarka is spiritual world, so even though it's in Bhoma, Dwarka area, but it's still Lord Krishna is there, and that's Vaikuntha. So here, Lord Krishna says, I have to take them also, I have to send them to their proper destination. Understanding this, the demigods, they bow down, very pleased, and then Lord also says that before leaving, I will come and visit you. So Lord Brahma and some of the demigods, they get to see Lord before he goes back to the spiritual world. Not everybody, not all the demigods, but some special devotees of Lord Shri Krishna. So at that time, after the demigods had left, Uddhava had heard about the curse. He also came to know of this prayers of the demigods because Lord Krishna reveals to him. So he meets Lord Krishna in a secluded place and he is praying to Lord Krishna. Why? Because Lord Krishna apparently doesn't plan to take Uddhava with him, right? And he's a close associate. How can be in separation? He cannot imagine himself to be in separation. So he is lamenting, he is overwhelmed with emotions. He is saying, how could you leave me behind? So he is approaching Lord Shri Krishna. Because Lord Krishna earlier he called the senior residents of Dwarka, Maharaj Ugrasen and others, some senior generals and so forth, and he discussed with them that we should all go to Prabhas and perform this nice yajna to ward off the effect of Brahmana's curse. Now, even though Lord is saying this, that is for the materialist. It appears that at Prabhas, Yadus, they fight with each other and they kill each other. The martial leela. So it's a pastime, a leela of Lord Shri Krishna, which is an arrangement for him to take all his associates back to his spiritual, world, Vaikuntha. So Dwarka is also a part of the spiritual world. Yet at the same time, there are some demigods who have taken birth in Yadava dynasty. Lord Krishna wants to make sure that they go back to their, demigod positions. And these were the demigods who had taken birth in the Yadava dynasty, but because they appeared to be as powerful as Lord Krishna, they could not appreciate Lordship. So sometimes they did not really heed to his instructions even. So that sometimes happens. Familiarity breeds contempt. So it is a mood of surrender that enables us. So they are going to be sent to their own residence in heavenly planets. Now if Lord Krishna takes everyone from Dwarka, which is a spiritual abode of Lord, then they cannot go to the heavenly planets, they will go to the spiritual planets. So Acharyas revealed that's why Lord took them all to Prabhas, which was part of the material world. And there, all these demigods were, not fully surrendered at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. They were able to go back to their heavenly planets. Well, there were some demigods who appeared, were able to fully surrender at the lotus feet of Lord Shri Krishna. And so they were able to go back to Godhead. Right? So we have some of them like Akrura and others who were some of the generals. Now coming to this particular point, that Uddhav is approaching Lord Krishna, realizing that Lord Krishna has not included him in his party that's going to Prabhas. So he's asking Lord Shri Krishna that I cannot live without you. I understand that you are planning to take everyone back home, back to Godhead. So Uddhav is understanding Lord Krishna's plan. So when he reveals that Lord Krishna, I know your plan, right? Sometimes, when a devotee knows what the plan is, then they, say, how could you do this to me, right? So this is how Uddhav is expressing in a very affectionate manner that what will happen to me means you have to take me with you. Means Lord Krishna was his life and soul, so much so that Lord Krishna considered Uddhav non-different from him. Now non-different from him doesn't mean that Uddhav has become Krishna. He is still a Jiva Tattva who is a living entity, who is a devotee of Lord. So his mood is to serve Lord Shri Krishna. So he is in this constitutional position. And Lord Krishna is in his, always, as Atma Ram, yet at the same time as an affectionate father, is always reciprocating with his devotee. So their goals and the exchanges were so well synchronized. That is where they are considered that they are non-different, because they are looking to please each other. Both have the mood of giving. Lord is reciprocating, yet at the same time he wants us to take the first step. When we take one step towards Krishna, Krishna takes 10 steps towards us. Our steps are like puny, 1 meter long maybe? But Lord Krishna, in 2 steps he can cover the whole universe. Can you imagine what he can do in 10 steps? He can directly enter our heart in maybe 5, 6 steps. Doesn't even have to complete his 10 steps. He is so merciful. So we have to just take our first step. So that's something we learn from these instructions, looking at the example of Uddhav. Now Uddhav had been doing Vapu Seva. Now Lord Krishna has further desire for Uddhav. So he says, no Uddhav, actually you are right that you are not coming with me. However, all these demigods, they came and they prayed to me that I should go back home. It is my time to go back home. I have been here for 125 autumns. In many of the times when we were kids, we used to hear, like, what's your age? So the parents would say, oh, he has seen, 12 savan. He has seen 21 savan. So that's like 21 springs. And 13 springs and so forth. Here, in Srimad Bhagavatam, I was surprised to hear how when Lord Brahma was praying that, Lord, you have been here for 125 autumns, just calling out that, Lord, you have been on earth for 125 years. So that happens to be just the duration where Lord Krishna, he manifests, he comes. And Lord Krishna comes only once in a day of Brahma. Many other incarnations, they keep coming during each day of Brahma. But Lord Krishna, and in each day of Brahma, there are 1000 Chaturyugas. So only in one of the Chaturyuga, in a day of Brahma, that Lord Krishna comes. 999 Chaturyugas, he doesn't come. So we are so fortunate that Lord Krishna came in this Chaturyuga, and he provided us such wonderful teachings and his pastimes that we can constantly engage in and make our life blissful and transcendental. So here, it is very interesting when we hear that Lord Krishna is going to take away all the Yadavas, and he is using his illusory energy to bewilder the materialists by making them feel like Lord Krishna, all the Yadavas were just like human beings. But we know that they are the eternal associates of Lord. So many of them are going back with Lord Krishna, and even Lord Krishna is going back home, back to Godhead, when he goes to Prabhas. And similarly, it has been given in the purport, as also by Srila Prabhupada, he identified that when Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, he left, he did not have any progeny. So now no seminal sons could actually take advantage because they would have experienced the same position. So this is a position consciousness that could have bewildered. And similarly, when Nityananda Prabhu, he had two wives, right? Janva Devi and Udav. So he also did not accept any of his natural sons born, of his own sons. So again, he did not accept them in devotee to kind of like promote. Yet at the same time, in Nectar of Devotion, Srila Prabhupada writes extensively as how his Guru Maharaj, Srila Bhakti Siddhanta Saraswati Maharaj, Srila Prabhupada, he had to go through so much tribulation, and he had to fight with, because the descendants of Nityananda Prabhu and Advaita Acharya Prabhu, they were calling that Goswami title is, only reserved for them. Well, Goswami means one who is the master of the senses. And that is, a designation given to one who is in Sannyas order, in the Gauriya Sampradaya. So they were reserving it to them. And even the Advaita Acharya Prabhu, he divested all his association, all of his sons except Achyutanand and two others. And Achyutanand was the chief faithful son of Advaita Acharya. He had no seminal progeny. So again, he did not have any son or daughter. Yet at the same time, whenever there is seminal son of a great personality, they try to take that position. And that position consciousness we also saw in the case of Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada, when he had one of his son, he actually filed a case against ISKCON, saying that all the property belonged to him. At that time, Srila Prabhupada had to come for defense. And he said, no, all my disciples are my sons. He's a seminal son. But everything belongs to ISKCON, International Society for Krishna Consciousness, and not to my son. So he, when the devotees and Srila Prabhupada won that case. But this actually just shows that anytime somebody becomes famous as a devotee, the seminal sons and daughters, they try to take advantage of that position. Or sometimes even because of affection, the father or mother may want to pass on that legacy to their seminal sons and daughters. So this is known, delusion of Maya that is constantly bewildering us, the living entities. So Uddhav, when he prays to Lord Shri Krishna, that how could you leave me? And he's praying that, Lord, you are so merciful. And you are the Supreme Personality of Godhead, and now you are going back home. I want to come with you. How could I live without you? You're my life and soul. Lord Krishna is smiling. And then his instruction is shocking, right? So sometimes when Lord Krishna is smiling, people, we would think that he has understood us. And when we hear what the end result is, we get a shock. So this is like a thunderbolt. So Uddhav, when he hears the response, Lord Krishna is saying, actually, you should take sannyas order and renounce order of life. So Uddhav is surprised and he further prays. But now, even before he prays, Lord Krishna now elaborates as why he is saying so. Lord Krishna is saying that when he was on this planet Earth, he was delivering, the burden of this earth, killing the demons. He was so busy. And he visited different planetary systems all around in the universe. He went and met Kashyapa Muni and Aditi in the heavenly planets when he went to return the earrings that were taken away by Bhaumasur, right? Bhaumasur had taken the earrings of Aditi, stolen those, snatched it away rather forcefully. And Indra had to come, praying to Lord Krishna to retrieve her earrings and so forth. So Lord Krishna went, defeated Bhaumasur and returned those earrings. So he went to the heavenly planets. Then he says, I even went to Yamlok to retrieve the son of my teacher, Sandipani Muni, his spiritual master. And then he says, I even went to Sutala planet and, gave my blessings to Pali Maharaj, who worshipped me opulently. And I went there to retrieve the 6 sons of my mother Devaki, who was, praying me to retrieve them. And so when I got them and further, they were able to go back to their respective positions. So here, Lord Krishna is saying he was going around, higher planets, lower planets, and so forth. Yet he did not get the chance to meet the great sages at Bhadrika Ashram. So he would like Uddhav to take to renounced order of life. And renounced order is, again, sannyasa ashram, but it is more about the mindset than about the covering. It is more about the mindset, means anasaktasya visharam yatharam upayunjata nirbandha krishna sambandhe yukta vairagya muchyate. So it is about renunciation, vairagya. Yukta vairagya, proper renunciation is that not having yourself attached to anything in material world, rather understanding that everything has to be used in the service of Lord Krishna. So everything that we see is an expansion of Lord Krishna's multifarious potencies, his energies. And these energies are supposed to be used by the energetic. So we should use everything in service of Lord Shri Krishna. So that is Yukta Vairagya. Nirbandha Krishna Sambandhe. So everything has to be dealt with its relationship in Lord Krishna's service or with Lord Krishna, how they are related to him. So that is the mood. So Lord Krishna is revealing and he is saying that you should not stay here in Dwarka, because after 7 days the ocean would engulf Dwarka. Now Acharyas explained that actually Dwarka is a spiritual planet. So it may appear that the ocean has engulfed, but in reality it will stop manifesting in this material universe. So again, just like we see the sun, right? We see it in the sky. So we think, okay, the sun is here, it's going, and it sets. That doesn't mean now the sun is not there. Sun is still there. It is because of the rotation of earth that we are able to see it during the daytime and not during the night time. But the sun is there. So similarly, Dwarka is there. Similarly, Krishna is there in his eternal abode. But because of our vision, and he just passes from one universe to another universe. There is another aspect we discuss, that we living entities go through 6 kind of changes, but of them 4 are not present in the spiritual world. Even the living entity, the soul, doesn't go through it. It's only the material body that goes through it. Material body takes birth, it grows because of the presence of soul and super soul, and then it generates progeny in some cases, and then further it maintains for some time. So that progeny is like expansion. We heard earlier that sometimes when you have sons and daughters, so they are expansions of you, not the literal expansions in the case of like living entity, but the bodily expansions. And then you maintain yourself and your family and your kutum, your society and your neighborhood. So that's there. And then maintain, and then you dwindle, you become old, your body dwindles, and you finally die. So the material body goes through this. But the living entity does not. It doesn't have these 4 aspects of taking birth, growing, dwindling, and death. that is not known to the living entity, the the soul, as well as anything spiritual doesn't go through. They only go through two major changes. One is maintains, and then second is expands. So Lord Krishna, he is constantly expanding in his multifarious energies. So when he is describing to Uddhav that he was so busy, maintaining this universe and expanding to make sure that he expanded as Balaram. So now that is sometimes confusing. People say, wait a minute, in Dwaraka it was Vasudev Krishna, right? It wasn't Krishna. Krishna never stepped out of Vrindavan. So from Krishna the first expansion was Balaram. From Balaram was the expansion, the four expansions, the Chaturvyuha. Vasudev, Sankarshan, Pradyumna and Aniruddha. So these are the four personalities who are in Dwarka. And how could Lord Vasudev say that he expanded into Balaram? Because these are all Vishnu Tattvas, they are non-different. So that's why we refer to them as Supreme Personality of Godhead. Vishnu Tattvas are non-different. The only difference comes because of their pastimes. So that's why Lord Krishna is saying that I expanded to Balaram. From Balaram the Chaturvyuhas came, and all these five personalities are responsible for managing this material universe. Right? So that is an important aspect that we should understand. And now Lord Krishna is identifying that he had been wandering all over and he had been visiting and giving blessings to so many of his devotees, even Lord Brahma and so forth. But he hasn't had the chance to meet Narayan Rishi to pass on the message. So he wants Uddhav to go to Badrika Ashram, go north. So he's saying, don't stay here. People in the coming of Kali age, they will perform many sinful activities. This is not a place for any gentleman. Basically, Srila Prabhupada used to say, this material world is not a place for a gentleman. So this is a similar instruction that Lord Krishna is giving. Now earlier we heard in Srimad Bhagavatam in the first canto, that when the sages and Namasharanya, they were asking that what is going to happen in this Kali age? Whose shelter will we take? That Lord Krishna has gone back to his abode. That was one of the 6 questions. So Sutta Goswami had revealed this answer. Hare Krishna. Krishna swadhamo pagyate dharma jnanadhibi saha kala nashtam drisham mesha puranarko adhinodhitaha. This Bhagavad Puran is as brilliant as the sun, and it has arisen just after the departure of Lord Krishna to his own abode, accompanied by religion, knowledge, etc. Persons who have lost their vision due to the dense darkness of ignorance in the age of Kali shall get light from this Puran. So yes, Lord Krishna, he went back to his abode, but Srimad Bhagavatam is not different from Lord Shri Krishna. Lord's deity form is not different from Lord Shri Krishna. Lord's holy name is not different from Lord Shri Krishna. Hare Krishna, Krishna Krishna, Hare Hare, Hare Ram, Ram Ram, Hare Hare. So Lord Krishna is glorifying, that you should go and take my message. So now he actually has a mission for Uddhav. And Uddhav feels this is mission impossible, right? Because he is in separation. How is he going to carry out a mission in the absence of Lord Krishna? He has this, mood of separation. He would only be crying. He's still associating, and he's so engaged in Vapu Seva. Sometimes when you do a specific service, right, a devotional service, you bring attachment. So sometimes Seva becomes more important than the Sevaya. Sevaya is the person you are serving. And Sevak is the person who is serving as a servant. But Seva is the service. And sometimes when you are doing that Seva on a regular basis, and suddenly that is taken away from you by Lord's will, right? So if Lord desires and if it's taken away. So again, I'm not talking about the Prakriti aspect. Kishkindha mindset, I'm not talking about that. Or I'm not talking about the Lanka mindset, right? Vikriti, which is, I am all in all and I'll decide who I give service and who I don't give service. No, that's not the mentality. We're talking about Sanskriti. Sanskriti is that people are making sure that they are giving opportunities to the younger ones. So sometimes when somebody gives their service to someone who's younger to them, at that time, feeling the separation that the service is taken away, that can cause some disturbance in one's heart. And so sometimes I've seen that, once I was initially asked to give Srimad Bhagavatam class, and my dear senior godbrother, he was giving me this, Srimad Prabhu, he was giving me this service, and he was like, Jiva, let's do, one Wednesday you, one Wednesday me. So we did that for a couple of years, and he was so merciful, because he would discuss, and I would sit in his class and he would discuss with me, and I was getting such amazing instructions from him. And that is a blessing. So when we are new in Krishna consciousness and we get the blessing of a senior Vaishnava, then it actually speeds us up. There is a concept called Godspeed, right? So we get that. We get a rocket tied to our back that takes us amazingly high. So that's a great blessing. And people sometimes become proud. We should not. We should always stay humble and always be respectful for such exalted personalities who, after having such an attachment, are able to give it at the will of Lord. So here, Uddhav has been asked by Lord Krishna himself to not go with him, but rather to go to Badrika Ashram, because Lord Krishna is feeling that, Uddhav, you have to take this instruction, because I was going everywhere, meeting everyone, but these great rishis at Badrika Ashram, including Narayana Rishi, who are not different than Arjuna and Krishna, I could not meet them and I could not impart these instructions. So you should take this message, because this message is of devotional service, and it will enable all the great sages to be able to renounce properly to this material world and attain the supreme abode. So he's not just talking about, Lord Krishna is not just talking about Narayana Rishi, but also talking about the sages at Badrika Ashram and in the north. So hearing this, Uddhav understands that yes, this is the time that Vapu Seva has to be taken away and Vani Seva has to come. Now Vani Seva is even more glorious than Vapu Seva. What is Vani Seva? Following the instructions of the spiritual master. So now Uddhav, he is saying that you are asking me to follow these instructions of yours, and I have to take this message of yours to Badrika Ashram. And for that you should instruct me. So he is very intelligent. This is his expert, intelligence. His expertise is visible here. Well, Uddhav is saying that yes, there can be so many spiritual masters, but there cannot be any spiritual master as great as you, my dear Krishna. Even in the heavenly planets, all the demigods, including Lord Brahma, they are under the clutches of Maya, the three modes of material energy. Now we are in Brahma Sampradaya, right? So he is after Lord Shri Krishna, he imparts knowledge to Lord Brahma, and from there our Brahma Sampradaya. So when we hear this, we get shocked that, what is the hope for us if Lord Brahma is in the, under the influence of the three modes of material nature. That actually makes us humble, that we should take to devotional service seriously, and we should surrender to Lord Shri Krishna and sincerely call out to him, saying that there is no hope for us. We are hoping against hope. And only our hope is that Lord Krishna would come and deliver us. That is our hope. So we take shelter of our spiritual master, who is further taking shelter of his spiritual masters. So again, in the disciplic succession, we are just relying on each other. And we have this hope against hope that Lord Krishna would come and deliver us. And Lord Krishna does deliver us from this Mrityu Sansara Sagarat. He says to Arjuna, Tesham aham samuddhata Mrityu Sansara Sagarat Bhavamina Chiratpata Maya Veshit Chesam. So again, he is saying that one who is surrendered to my lotus feet, I deliver that devotee from this Bhav Saga, this material ocean of naces. And so Uddhav is praying to Lord Shri Krishna that you give me the instructions. So this is where he is directly approaching Lord Shri Krishna. And Lord Krishna continues to elaborate his instruction as how Uddhav can be in such a renounced order, right, taking to Sannyas Ashram, how he can continue to take everything in relations with Krishna and not be affected by the dualities. Why is Lord Krishna saying that? Because Uddhav is going to see many sinful activities being performed all around by the people in this Kali age, men in this Kali age. They will be performing all kind of, activities which will cause lot of distress, lot of sins all around the world. And he should not get bewildered, first. So a devotee has to understand that whatever is happening in this material world is happening because of the influence of this Kali age. Yes, Lord Krishna is the Supreme Personality of Godhead. He is there, yet at the same time, He is providing us with the responsibility that we have to really take steps in the right direction. And people who are fortunate, who come to Krishna consciousness, so those are fortunate people. Jnanvamam prapadyante vasudevam sarvamiti. So after many, many births, an intelligent person, a jnani, comes to take the shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. So if you are intelligent, then you will take shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. And when you take shelter of Shri Krishna, you become smart, right? And what is that smart shloka? Smartavyo satatam Vishnu virsmartavyo na jatu chit sarve vidhi nishedesyor etayor eva kinkara. Smartavyo satatam Vishnu. Always remember Krishna. Virsmartavyo na jatu chit. Never forget Krishna. Sarve vidhi nishedesyor. For all the prohibitions, inhibitions, regulations and rules, etayor eva kinkara. They are just the maidservants of these two principles. And what are the two principles? First is always remember Krishna, and the second rule is never forget Krishna. And that's what makes the devotees cool. And so they take shelter of Lord Shri Krishna. When I say cool, then you remember the cool mantra, I hope. Anukulyasa sankalpa pratikulyasa vivarjanam rakshishyatiti vishwaso gopatitve varnam tatha atmanikshepa kalparne shadvidha sharanagati. So the 6 limbs of surrender, sharanagati, are described in this cool verse. Anukulyasya sankalpa, accepting things that are, favorable to devotional service. Pratikulyasya vivarjanam, rejecting things that are unfavorable to devotional service. Rakshishyatiti vishvaso, having firm faith that Lord Krishna will provide protection. Gopatitve varnam tatha, that Lord is the guardian. Atma Nikshepa, surrender everything in service of Lord Krishna. Karpaniya is humility, in a humble mood. Again, being more humbler than the grass on the street, more tolerant than the tree, not expecting any respect for oneself, but ready to give all respects to others. When one is in this way engaged in devotional service, then one can continue to perform devotional service eternally, constantly, uninterrupted. Because there is no desire for self-benefit, there is only desire for Lord's pleasure. Anukulena Krishna Anushilena, following in the footsteps of Acharyas, favorable to Lord Krishna as Lord Krishna desires. So when Lord Krishna is giving me such wonderful instructions, which is also being propagated through these various verses that we just discussed, Uddhav is still not satisfied. So he's asking Lord that please help me further. So at that time, Lord Krishna, he says something that is very shocking to us. When I heard this, I read it again and again, and then I had to go purport and look at so many other articles where Lord Krishna says that the Jiva soul, Jiva is the soul, living entity, the same, right? Jiva is the Sanskrit word for living entity, it's also a Sanskrit word for soul. So he's his own guru. So when I read this, I was like, wait a minute, how could it be that I am my own spiritual master? How could it be possible? We are always taking shelter of a spiritual master, and by the mercy of Krishna, we get the shelter of a spiritual master. Brahma bhavite kauna bhagyavana jiva Guru Krishna pasade paya bhakti lata bija. So this verse reveals that we are wandering, living entities wandering in this material world, in upper planets, lower planets, like on a Ferris wheel. Srila Prabhupada used to give this example of Ferris wheel. And how is it possible that while wandering in this, we could become our own guru? Because it's clearly said that by the mercy of Krishna, he sends his representative externally, manifested that we can take shelter, a bona fide spiritual master, that whose shelter we take, and we are thus able to become devotee, and our mantras, our chanting, and our devotional service would have meaning. It would have the right mood in that state when we take proper instructions from our spiritual master. So how is it possible that we can be our own guru? So it is very nicely described in later verses where Lord Krishna reveals that one can look at this world, this material world, understanding the nature of this material world, and understanding the positive aspects and negative aspects, understanding that there are dualities in this world, and understand that there is a spiritual aspect, and everything when we connect with Lord Shri Krishna, then it starts to make sense that Lord Krishna's energies are expanding and creating, appearing like this material world, Maya Devi, right, the material nature. The three modes of material nature, and how they are influencing different kind of people, and how they are causing people to engage in different kind of activities. When we start to understand this, then we understand that Lord Krishna is revealing that by proper understanding, as per the Shastras, as per the Sadhus, as per the instruction of spiritual master, we are able to take shelter. And thus, with introspection, we can progress spiritually on our own. Yes, of course. That doesn't mean we don't take a spiritual master. So we should always take Diksha. But we can be our own instructing gurus. And this is where Uddhav, he is asking Lord Shri Krishna to be his spiritual master. And that's where Lord Krishna further elaborates. So this is where the 18th verse, Uddhav is saying, Narayanam nam narasakyam sharanam prapadye. So, you are known as Narayan, the true friend of all living entities. So, I take shelter at your lotus feet. When Uddhav says this, then Lord Krishna is giving him further instructions. So, in the instructions, Lord Krishna talks about the 24 gurus of Lord Dattatreya, the Avdhuta Brahman, or his conversation was there with Yadu Maharaj. He talks about the Varnashram Dharma. He talks about the characteristics of a liberated being, liberated soul, one who is transcendental to the three modes of material nature, and one who is a conditioned soul in the clutches of any of the three modes of material nature, or combination of those. He talks about the deity worship. He talks about Varnashram Dharma. He talks about the process of devotional service and transcendental topics. So this is where we would end today, and in the next class we will cover the next aspect. So today we are especially offering prayers to the Lord for our dear friends, His Grace Akshobhya Prabhu and Leela Shakti Mataji. So we really want to, please join us in chanting and singing Lord Narasimha prayers. Hare Krishna. निताय गौ प्रेमानंदे हरि हरि बोल। हरे कृष्णा।
Hare Krishna.